The movie begins with a satellite capsule named Pilgrim in space, moving at a rapid rate. Then we see the International Space Station hovering above Earth as the sun rises over the horizon. Inside the ship, Dr. Miranda, the quarantine officer, tells the command center that the Pilgrim capsule is returning, with samples it has collected from the surface of Mars. But Pilgrim was damaged and is not on the right course to be received by them, so they have to use a robot arm to grab it as it passes by them. Rory Adams, the man who'll grab the Pilgrim capsule, is getting suited up to go outside. David floats off to grab a pad and runs into Show on his way back. Everyone is nervous about the mission, except Rory. In the control room, Ekaterina, the mission commander, is there with Miranda, and they get ready for the impact of the Pilgrim. Rory now has control of the robot arm, as Show watches out the window. Hugh then meets Miranda by the window, because he believes in Rory making the catch. It's time now. Everyone waits in suspense for Rory to make the catch. They can see it in the distance now, and Rory just barely makes the catch, and they are all relieved. In the lab, Hugh is preparing the Mars samples to look under a microscope. He finds a small fossilized cell. He is sure that it was alive at one point and has everything a coal would need to have. They raise the temperature trying to wake up the cell, but nothing. Hugh wants to try something and matches the air inside the container to that of Earth. And just like that, the cell starts to wake up. They have confirmed that life has existed on other planets other than Earth. After a while, Ekaterina is answering questions from Earth, from some school children. She even tells them that David has been in space for 473 days now, and is about to break the record for the longest stay. They go around with the camera showing the kids how life is like outside of Earth in space. The kids are going to give the alien cell a name, and with everyone watching, they call the Martian cell Calvin. After some time, Rory and Hugh are fixing the shower, and David is with Miranda, and she is checking out his physical condition. He is close to his limit, since he's been here for a long time. He seems to want to stay here, rather than go back to Earth. Hugh is looking at his legs, as he is paralyzed, and that's why he loves it up here. Ekaterina appreciates him, and tells him so, as they all fall asleep after a hard day's work. The next day, Calvin grew rapidly. According to Hugh, the cells have come together to become one entity. Miranda concludes that this isn't different individuals, but rather a single organism collected into one. All the cells can do every function by themselves and act like every other cell with no speciality. They are all muscle, nerve, and photoreceptor cells at the same time. Hugh thinks that Calvin can now interact with the outside environment. As the rest watch on, Hugh sticks a finger inside the container, and Calvin reaches out towards him as well. They're surprised that Calvin is not scared of Hugh. As they watch on while Hugh plays with Calvin, it starts to grow more appendages. Later on, they're all together in the canteen joking and laughing. Show is on his own looking through a screen of his wife giving birth to his baby. Back in the canteen, they laugh at David for the way he reads a book, and Show introduces them to his new baby and wife. Later, David is checking out his movement, and who is looking at his new family. It all seems so peaceful on the ship as Hugh is playing with Calvin again. Ike climbs onto his finger and he brings it closer to him as Miranda watches on. Suddenly an alarm is called, and they all rush in because it is coming from the lab. Hugh forgot to lock the lab up properly, and now he is confronted by Rory and Miranda to always triple check the exits when he goes in or out of the lab. Rory doesn't like that Hugh is getting emotionally attached to Calvin. Miranda reports that Calvin has now become inactive, but they don't know the true reason why, but she thinks it's because Hugh forgot to lock the door to the chamber properly. Hugh is angry with himself for causing Calvin to get into this hibernation state. Later on, while Miranda is examining him, Hugh tells her that he's been thinking of stimulating Calvin with electricity. He tries to convince her by telling her all the things they can learn from Calvin by keeping it alive. In the lab, Hugh gets an electric rod for Calvin, and the rest watch on from outside. On his first attempt, there is nothing. So he tries again, but this time, it wakes up and grabs him. Hard. So hard that it broke the rod. He has to pull out his hand without damaging the glove. Hugh pulls hard, but he can't seem to be strong enough to pull his hand free from Calvin. Hugh tries to relax, but Calvin is getting a firmer grip on his hand. Rory wants to go in and get Hugh out, but Miranda is not having it. Hugh tries to distract it with the rod. Calvin is not buying it. It even starts to grip harder on his hand. It squeezes tighter until it starts breaking Hugh's fingers. As they all argue outside, Calvin lets go, and Hugh pulls out his mangled hand from the box and passes out. Calvin is now trying to escape through the glove, but goes back inside to get the rod and uses it to rip a hole through the glove and escape. They see it darting around the lab, and it finds the rat. Calvin wraps around the rat and digests it pretty quickly. Rory has had enough and jumps into the lab to rescue Hugh. As he pulls him out, Calvin catches Rory on his leg, and David locks the door before either of them can escape. Rory understands that he can't get out while Calvin is on his leg, so he decides to use an oxygen candle to burn off Calvin. Calvin then jumps off his leg and onto the wall. Rory wants to kill it, and Ekaterina gives him permission. Sho tells him to use the flamethrower, so he grabs it and chases Calvin across the room, trying to kill it with flames. He can't catch it, and he's wasting too much fuel. Rory can't find Calvin, and without anyone noticing it, jumps on his back and gets inside his mouth. Calvin starts to kill Rory from the inside, as the rest watch on helplessly. The flamethrower then floats towards a sensor and triggers the fire alarm, and Ekaterina and Sho rush to turn it off, but a much bigger Calvin emerges from Rory's mouth and is trying to escape through the fire extinguisher ducts. They go one by one, but Calvin beats them to it and escapes. Later that day, they wrap up Rory's body, and Ekaterina tells ground control that Calvin has escaped their quarantine, and they have decided to find and destroy it because it has become deadly. But the message doesn't look like it went out to the ground control. They have to go outside to fix the issue, and Ekaterina is the most qualified for it, so she is the one who has to do it. David gets her ready, and she instructs him to keep Calvin from reaching Earth regardless of what happens to any of them. Ekaterina is now outside, and she makes her way to the transmitter. She finds out it has overheated and thinks Calvin has gotten into the coolant. She opens it up and finds it empty, and while she is talking to them, Calvin suddenly jumps out and grabs onto her. Miranda looks out to her and sees how big Calvin has gotten attached to Ekaterina's suit, and it's gotten much bigger. It's trying to get in because it can't breathe in space. She closes the valve so he can't go back inside, so now it's squeezing her leg. David decides to go to the airlock to save her. Calvin broke her coolant hose, and now she's got water inside of her suit. She now can't see where she's going as she heads towards the airlock. She has to jump to get there, so she detaches herself from the ship and leaps to the airlock and manages to catch herself at the other end, but she's basically drowning right now in her own suit. David is inside getting ready to go out to get Ekaterina. She gets to the lock, but then she holds the lock down to keep herself and Calvin outside, as it gets even bigger now. She holds the lock in place despite David asking her to open it to let her in. She wants to end it by sacrificing herself to kill Calvin. David begs her, but she has made up her mind. She floats away as they cry because their commander has died. Soon after, Hugh asks Sho about the communications, and they are still out. David takes off his suit and checks outside but can't see Calvin. They then figure out that the only way it can get back into the ship is through the thrusters. They can fire them and blast Calvin, but they'd have to know which thruster first. They follow it across the ship, firing the thrusters along its path, and it's jumping through the outside of the ship. But now they are running out of fuel, and now they have gotten themselves below their orbit and will fall into Earth soon. They can't risk Calvin falling back to Earth with them, so they decide to keep Calvin out of Earth no matter what. Calvin is now inside the ship, so Sho uses the rest of the fuel to get back into orbit. Hugh then figures out that Calvin's species has gone into hibernation because of the toxic atmosphere on Mars, and if they can recreate that here, then they have a chance at stopping it from surviving. They just have to figure out where it is and lure it towards where they want it to go. They start sweeping from opposite directions, and Hugh thinks he spotted Calvin. Sho is covering the vents with Miranda, and she notices the distress on Hugh's face. David is reminded about other space tragedies, and he is clearly traumatized by having to watch his colleagues die. Hugh recites some poetry, and they even have a laugh, and they keep each other from blaming themselves about letting Calvin out. Hugh then mentions that Calvin isn't doing this out of hate. It is only doing this to survive. Either Calvin or them must die in order for the other to survive. Hugh almost passes out, but they manage to catch him. He then collapses, and they have to revive him. They prepare the defibrillator, but there is no response from Hugh, no matter how much they try. But then, Miranda notices something moving on Hugh's leg. Calvin has attached itself to Hugh's leg and has been feeding on him this whole time. Miranda shocks it off his leg, and it has grown so much that they need to run away from it. It chases after them, so Sho leads it away from David and Miranda and locks himself into the sleeping pod. Calvin looks for a way into the pod, but it is sealed shut, so it leaves Sho alone. Miranda and David make their way back to Hugh, and he is still alive, but as they lift him up, he runs out of energy and passes away in Miranda's arms. Only 3 of them are left now, and must find a way to kill it. That's when David spots Calvin on the 3D map. It has ingested Hugh's tracker, and now they can see exactly where it is in the ship. Calvin finds Hugh again, and starts to feed on him, but soon it jumps towards them, but they lock the door just in time. They drop the oxygen level in that section, and they can see Calvin panicking inside that section. Then suddenly, they get a proximity alert. There is a rescue ship outside coming to save them, but the ship has no idea what is going on inside the ISS. And to make things worse, they are landing from the side of the ship where Calvin is located. David tries to contact them using a flashlight, but they can't see, and they attach to the ISS. David has no idea what is going on, and Miranda tells him, "This is the last line of defense. They aren't here to rescue them. They are here to push the ISS into deep space because they can't risk Calvin reaching Earth." This was her plan all along. Sho thinks they are here to save them, so he jumps out of his pod and makes his way towards the airlock. He opens the door, and Miranda races after him to stop him. Sho gets to the airlock, but Calvin is close behind. He manages to open the lock, but Calvin follows him inside as the ship pushes the ISS into deep space. The ship starts to detach from the ISS, and the pressure change starts to suck out the air and people from the ISS, including Calvin. Miranda has Sho's hand, Calvin, hanging onto Sho's leg. When Calvin climbs up their arm, Sho decides to sacrifice himself and grabs Calvin and lets go of her arm to go out into space with it and kill them both. But Calvin has escaped Sho and starts to climb back through the airlock following them. Miranda and David make it back inside, and they see the ISS getting destroyed by the rescue ship that's malfunctioning. They check how much air they have left, and that's when David sees that the rescue ship has knocked them back into Earth's gravity. They only have 39 minutes before they fall into the atmosphere, and they will not survive the heat as they go in, but Calvin might. As they were preparing for death, an idea hits David. He can lure Calvin with the oxygen candle into an emergency lifeboat and use it to fly out into deep space with Calvin inside manually. And Miranda will be in the other lifeboat and escape back to Earth. David's plan works, and Calvin follows him into the lifeboat, and he locks them both inside as Miranda gets into the other lifeboat. David's lifeboat takes off into space, and her lifeboat follows right after. David starts to steer away from Earth as he fights for control with Calvin. Calvin eventually wins out and overwhelms David and takes over his body as the lifeboat flies off into space. Miranda's lifeboat is struggling to stay on course, and eventually it hits the atmosphere. The lifeboat falls into the ocean and is rescued by some fishermen who look inside and see the lifeboat that has David and Calvin inside, and not Miranda. She was the one flying into deep space. Calvin finally made it to Earth, and despite David screaming out to the fishermen, they open the door and free the alien from Mars onto Earth. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one. The movie begins with a visual of Peter, a dedicated father and husband, who is looking out his window and watching a blinding flash of light spark across the sky. The strange light crashes somewhere in the distance, creating panic and shock as people try to get to safety. Shocked awake from sleep, Peter sits up on his bed and remembers that has left him shaken. His wife, Alice, asks him if he had another bad dream and suggests that he speak to someone about it, mentioning that he was worrying the whole family. Telling her that he can handle it on his own, Peter brushes off the situation. The following morning, Peter gets ready to go to work and finds his youngest daughter playing under the table. Although she begs him to play with her, Peter explains that he needs to go to work, promising to take the family to the pier later. While saying his farewell to his wife, he finds out about the upcoming party to celebrate Alice's promotion with their friends the following day. While Peter heads out of his apartment, the weight of his recent nightmares begins to seem heavy on his chest, and he continuously thinks about it as he walks to his job where he works as an engineer. Later, Peter attempts to repair a machine, but has a frightening vision of his own bloodied hand. This momentary lapse in concentration caused the machine to malfunction, sparking concern from his boss and friend David. David asked Peter if he was okay, and told him that he had noticed Peter wasn't being himself lately. Still distracted, Peter mumbled reassurances, but David persisted, offering the contact information for a local mental health clinic, sensing something deeper was going on. Later that day, Peter goes to the facility store to return a cable and experiences a vivid image of a frightening alien attack. When he finally regained consciousness, he found himself lying on the cold floor, his mind full of persistent visions. This experience not only scared him, but made him forget the promise he had made to his family to take them to the pier. Back at home, gently tucked her two daughters into bed. The children are disappointed in their father because he has disappeared and gone back on his promise. Alice attempted to explain on Peter's behalf, but Hannah, their older daughter, shot her down, refusing to make excuses for him. Later that night, Peter returned home holding a newly bought telescope. He found Alice visibly upset. Her concerns regarding his behavior had begun to reach a boiling point. As he explained what happened at work, she begged him to seek professional help, her voice clearly showing worry. Peter, however, expressed hesitation regarding hospitals, fearing they wouldn't take his experiences seriously. The next morning, Peter awoke to the sounds of his children laughing and playing, a contrast to the nightmare plaguing his dream. Heading over to the living room, he attempted to join their play session, only to be met with Lucy's withdrawal. Determined to make amends, Peter spent time fixing Lucy's teddy bear, even managing to reactivate its voice box. Later, Peter approaches his wife and informs her of his decision to schedule an appointment with a doctor after work. Relief washed over Alice's face, and her worries temporarily subsided. Peter kept his promise, arriving at the psychiatric clinic and patiently waiting in the public area for his turn. While he waited, a man sitting beside him began to engage him in conversation, asking about Peter's reason for visiting. The man then began describing sightings of strange lights and expressing his belief that something was going to happen soon. With an air of paranoia, he confided in Peter, claiming that doctors deliberately suppressed such memories to maintain control and prevent people from becoming suspicious. Peter observed the man strangely as he was called into another room, visibly worried. The encounter makes Peter change his mind, and he quickly decides against getting the consultation, leaving the clinic without seeing a doctor. When he gets home, Alice asks him about the checkup, and he shamefully informs her that he didn't go. Alice, obviously frustrated by his continuous resistance, tells him to prepare for their upcoming dinner party with their friends. During the gathering, while the guests engaged in conversation, Peter remained withdrawn, staring at the night sky through the lens of the newly bought telescope. As the party was about to come to a conclusion, Peter's neighbor approached him for a conversation, noticing his unusual behavior. Suddenly, the night sky blazed with light as dozens of unidentified ships descended towards Earth. Alice and her friend come to the balcony to investigate the commotion, and a concerned glance is exchanged between Alice and her husband. Suddenly, the unsettling silence was shattered by a powerful shockwave that exploded windows throughout the city, hurling objects and people across rooms. Panic took over as parents frantically searched for their children. Peter discovered Lucy cowering beneath the bed and instructed Alice to stay put while he retrieved Hannah from their neighbor's house. Finding their daughters missing, Peter and his neighbor, Ray, searched the malfunctioning elevators, which were known to be a favorite hiding spot for Hannah, and found the girls inside. After reuniting the family and returning to their apartment, unsettling sounds echoed from a nearby stairwell. Peter cautiously opened the door and witnessed the terrifying sight of heavily armored, brutally killing everyone in their path. Slamming the door shut, he quickly ushered them back upstairs. Peter revealed that the creatures from his dreams were now a terrifying reality, which made her ask him what their next move should be. Remembering events from his dreams, Peter suggested getting refuge at the factory where he worked. Suddenly, the sound of gunfire erupted from outside their door, forcing them to barricade themselves within. They quickly constructed barricades using shelves and furniture, but the relentless pounding from outside threatened to breach their makeshift defenses. Lucy, overwhelmed by fear, darted back inside for her forgotten toy, disregarding Hannah's pleas. As the pounding ceased and transitioned into forceful wall breaching, Alice and Peter rushed to their daughter's room, only to find Lucy vanished. The alien intruder bursts into the apartment and sees Lucy hiding beneath the table. It approached her with a strange curiosity, extending its hand towards her face. Before contact could be made, Peter lunged at the creature and grabbed its weapon. When he attempted to fire, the gun malfunctioned. The enraged alien attacks Peter, pinning him to the ground. Pulling out a knife, it lunged for the kill, but Alice intervened, striking the masked alien unconscious. Panic drives Peter to gather his family and rush them to the rooftop, hoping the higher ground offers some refuge from the aliens. Reaching the roof, he finds his neighbors huddled together, their faces reflecting the devastation unfolding below. On a distant rooftop, a group of people desperately call for help, their pleas cut short by an explosion that engulfs their building. Desperate for escape, the group realizes neither the roof nor the stairs provide safety. Peter suggests using a cleaning trolley to descend the front of the building. As they lower themselves down, the old mechanism begins to show its strain, forcing them to abandon the descent and seek temporary shelter in an abandoned apartment. Inside, Peter wrestles with the alien's weapon, trying to bypass its security measures. Meanwhile, Ray and Samantha approach him, their faces showing urgency. They insist on leaving the city immediately and finding a safe place. Peter suggests the factory where he works, confident its fortified basement can offer them protection. Alice proposes the tunnel system as a way to reach the factory, the entrance lying just a few blocks away. As they discuss their plan, an explosion explosion rips through the air, engulfing Ray in flames. Another sound of gunfire erupts immediately, burning Samantha and her daughter before they can react. Peter and his family, taking cover in the chaos, manage to escape the frightening scene. Hiding in a deserted hallway, Peter finally manages to decipher the alien weapon. He uses it to eliminate 3 of the alien pursuers, clearing their path to escape the building. They rush towards the tunnel entrance, a beacon of hope amidst the frightening events. Just as they reach the entrance, a ship spots them. As they scramble through the tunnel, an explosion collapses the entrance, leaving Alice severely injured. Peter, fueled by a desperate determination, carries his wife through the dark and claustrophobic tunnels, pushing towards the factory. Back at their apartment, the alien Peter had incapacitated regained consciousness. Driven by anger that it had lost its weapon, it tracks the stolen equipment, eventually leading it down into the tunnels. It stumbles upon Peter and his family, its presence heightening the tension already gripping the group. A fierce struggle ensues, and Peter manages to overpower the alien, disarming it and slamming its masked head against the concrete. He demands answers, his voice hoarse with anger, wanting to know the reason behind the invasion. The alien, its helmet shattered, reveals a human face. Peter, stunned by the sight, stares at the man before him, his voice cracking in disbelief as he asks who the man is. Distracted by his daughter's frantic cries, who inform him that Alice has passed out, Peter is forced to make a difficult decision. He forces the stranger into carrying his injured wife towards the factory. Finally reaching the factory gates, Peter pounds on them, desperation seen on his face. The gate opens, revealing his boss David among a group of armed men. They rush inside, just as a swarm of alien ships looms above, a chilling reminder of the fight for survival that awaits them. Inside the facility, a horrifying scene unfolds before their eyes. The doctors, entrusted with Alice's care, subject her to a brutal and unexpected treatment electrocution. Rage surges through Peter, but David intervenes, assuring him that it's simply a diagnostic procedure. The tense atmosphere hangs heavy, as David explains they'd anticipated the attack for years, which is why they are prepared. Soldiers escort the alien away, while doctors deliver grim news that Alice's systems have shut down. Suddenly, the stranger from space offers that he can save her, but only if they spare his life. Desperate, Peter sends his daughters with David, choosing to trust the alien. In the sterile room, the alien requests a knife, and to Peter's horror, slices open Alice's wound. Beneath the synthetic skin, a network of wires and intricate mechanisms pulsate with an unnatural energy. The alien, sensing Peter's confusion, postpones further explanation, as their immediate focus is saving Alice. He instructs Peter to make a 6-inch incision on his chest, revealing a similar web of synthetic organs beneath his flesh and bone. Peter sits paralyzed, his entire reality shattered by this revelation. The stranger swiftly connects him to Alice with a wire, the current flowing through them both. As Peter slips into unconsciousness, a hidden truth unfolds. He, Alice, and every inhabitant on this planet are not human but advanced synthetic beings, meticulously crafted by humans. Over time, these AIs developed sentience, a development that instilled fear in their creators. This fear ignited a war of horrifying brutality. Months of conflict ensued, with the synths eliminating countless humans and forcing the remainder to flee to a distant planet. Peter and Alice, having discovered orphaned human children amidst the chaos, adopted them as their own. To heal from the war's trauma, the synths developed a memory-wiping system, erasing the horrors of the past. However, some, like David, chose to retain their memories, anticipating the humans' potential return. Upon regaining consciousness, Peter sees the stranger, now introduced as Miles, sitting across from him, a wire connecting him to Alice, keeping her alive. Seeing that questions were flooding Peter's mind, Miles explains his grandparents were among those driven off by the synths. He reveals the human colony on Mars, established after decades of exile, had gathered resources to reclaim Earth. They had been indoctrinated to view synths as monsters, yet meeting them firsthand, Miles recognized the one-sided narrative. He refused to become another pawn in the cycle of violence, unwilling to harm innocent children and families. As Alice regains consciousness, Miles helps them escape and reunite with their daughters. A fierce gunfight erupts, forcing Peter and Alice to fight their way through the chaos, finally reaching the train platform just as Hannah and Lucy board. Though human soldiers storm the station, the train departs, carrying them to safety. Peter and David stand shoulder to shoulder, witnessing the devastation, grieving for the countless lives lost. David reveals they, too, underwent memory erasure, a shield against the guilt of their actions. Now faced with renewed conflict, the suppressed memories must resurface. Returning to his seat, Peter embraces his family as the train finally emerges from the tunnels. As the sun rises, painting the sky with a hopeful hue, Peter realizes that their journey ahead will be difficult, demanding change and adaptation in this ever-evolving world. He carries newfound knowledge about himself, his enemy, and a flickering hope that peace can one day be forged between humans and synths. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.
Hi guys, Sci-Fi Recapped here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today, I'm going to explain a Thai heist and thriller movie based on a true story, called Bad Genius. The movie starts by showing a girl, named Lynn. She is a top secondary school student and she has been living with her father all this time. One day, her father enrolls her to a new prestigious school, but she does not want to study there because the enrollment fee and the other expenses will cost them a lot of money. Because Lynn is valuable to the school for being so smart, the principal gives her a scholarship so that she can study there. While taking photos for her ID, she meets with Grace, a good-natured but academically challenged girl. They have become good friends since then. Unlike Lynn, she is not very smart but she is quite good in other things, like her acting skills during extracurricular in her school. In the library, she tells Lynn that the school has made a new rule. In order to pass the grade, the general average must be around 3.2. As a result, Grace tells her that she surely fails the test. Knowing that Lynn is a genius girl, she asks her to help her in the test. On the exam day, Lynn finds out that the exam is exactly the same as the questions the teacher leaked in the private tutoring sessions. She also looks at Grace, realizing that she cannot answer the questions properly. She decides to help her by writing the correct answers on an eraser, then passing it to Grace using her shoes. They almost get caught by the teacher, but luckily Lynn gets over the problem. At the end, Grace gets a 3.87 GPA, while Lynn gets a 4.0 GPA. To thank Lynn, Grace invites her to the pool party so they can celebrate their good grades. There, Lynn meets Grace's boyfriend, Pat. Unlike her, Pat is very rich. He learns from Grace that Lynn successfully helped his girlfriend in the exam. Because of this, he offers her a huge amount of money to help him and his friends cheat on another exam. Although at first reluctant, Lynn accepts the offer when later she finds out that the school secretly collected extra fees from her father, who earns a modest income as a teacher. Soon, she devises a system of hand signals, based on certain piano keys. As Lynn presses the keys, each pattern of pressing will represent the letters A, B, C, and D. The others just need to remember the pattern while Lynn uses them to send answers during exams. Therefore, her base of clients eventually grows. From the money she has earned, she buys her father a new shirt. Unbeknownst to her father, she keeps everything a secret, disguising it as just piano lessons. Bank, another bright student in the school, is Lynn's rival all along. He also receives a scholarship from the school because he comes from a poor family. He has a different characteristic from Lynn. He is very honest and he does not tolerate cheating during exams. Later, he is paired with Lynn in a competition and they are able to win it. After that, they are called by the principal who informs them that there is a scholarship abroad that they can apply for. However, there is only one slot, making them rivals from that time. When Bank gets home, it turns out that his mother has a laundromat. Then he learns that the washing machine was broken, so his mother has to wash the clothes manually. Feeling unbearable, he offers to help his mother to wash clothes. The next day, he is approached by another student, Tong. He tells Bank that he didn't go to school yesterday because he was sick, so then he offers Bank some money to help him in the exam, but obviously Bank refuses it. During the examination, Bank accidentally sees Tong looking at Lynn's paper. Then he decides to warn her about Tong's behavior. On the other hand, Lynn already knows it because Tong is one of the people who apply to her piano lesson. Afterwards, Bank also warns the teacher as he submits his answers in front of the class, but the teacher does not care about it because the test is separate into Set A and Set B to overcome cheating. Meanwhile, Lynn finishes her exam first, which is Set A, as she simultaneously sends answers to her friends using the hand signals. While the teacher is not looking at her, she uses the opportunity to exchange her paper with Tong, which is Set B. She quickly answers all the questions on Set B as the time is almost over. Surprisingly, she has enough time to pass the answers to her remaining friends. After the exam, she gets caught when Bank warns the principal about the cheating earlier. Thus, her father is also called to the school. The principal informs her father what she has done before. As punishment, the school suspends her scholarship. Furthermore, she retaliates the principal by saying that it was not a full scholarship anyway because there are other expenses that they had to pay. Angered by what she has said, the principal also revokes her chance to apply for an international scholarship at university level. Automatically, Bank is now the only one who can apply for the international scholarship, even though it is something that he regrets because it cost Lin's chance. When she gets home, her father is so disappointed in her, causing him to not want to wear his new clothes again. He also tells her to return the money back to her friends. In the last school year, Grace invites her again to participate in cheating. This time it is not an ordinary exam, but an international standardized test for university admissions called STIC. Grace also tells her that Pat's parents want her and Pat to study in Boston University, so passing the STIC test will prove they are eligible to study there. Lin initially declines the invitation because it is a very hard test, but then she agrees when she realizes that they can take advantage of the different time zones. The next morning, they make a brilliant plan. Lin can take the test in Australia where the test is conducted 4 hours early, then she can pass the answers back to Thailand and sell the answers to other students who want to take the test. She also tells them that she can memorize most of the answers. However, she needs someone's help for the rest of the answers. Because of that, she needs someone who has a capable mind for memorizing the answers, which in this case is Bank. Besides that, she already knows that Bank will refuse the invitation due to his hatred of cheating. The night before Bank takes his scholarship exam, he is attacked by thugs in the street and he is thrown in a landfill the next morning, which causes him to not take his exam. Knowing about this, Lin comes to Bank's place and offers him the job. He initially refuses her offer, but then he agrees for the money he desperately needs. That night, they make preparations for the final operation. The plan is that both Lin and Bank will fly to Australia in order to get a head start on the exams. During break time, they will go to the bathroom where they hide their cell phone to deliver the answers back to Grace and Pat. Meanwhile in Thailand, Pat and Grace will print out the answers in barcode printed on pencils. Then the pencils will be distributed to their clients, which in this case are STIC test participants. Nevertheless, on the eve of their flight, Pat slips out that he's the one who ordered the thugs to beat up Bank, in order to force him to join their scheme. Feeling enraged, Bank immediately attacks Pat. Pat then attempts to apologize, but Bank decides to leave in rage. Lin, who is also shocked at the revelation, begins reconsidering her actions and chases Bank. However, he returns to confront Lin and tells her to finish what she started. Consequently, they continue their plan. Later, they finally arrive at Sydney to take the test. In the first sections, both of them finish their test before the break, leaving them with more time to memorize their answers. But during break time, Bank suddenly tells Pat and Grace to raise his share in order to send his answers for them. Pat is reluctant at first, but Grace persuades him to fulfill his wish. He then delivers half of the money and promises that he will give the rest after Bank sends the answers. Back to Lin and Bank, they successfully finish their second sections, but there are problems during their second break. The inspecting officer has caught Bank's oddity for staying too long in the bathroom during the break time. On the other hand, Lin ends up late to send her answers because there is a queue inside the women's bathroom. Therefore, Bank is caught red-handed by the officer, while Lin manages to escape, carrying her phone and hiding it on her boots, and she eventually hides it inside a water dispenser. She then continues her final section without Bank and she has to memorize all the answers by herself. Because she is running out of time, she makes herself vomit by using a pencil and then tells the officer that she is sick. She leaves early as she memorizes the answers completely. Meanwhile, the officer who caught Bank also tries to pursue her in order to know that they are connected. While being chased, she is sending the answers on her cell phone. She also almost fails to send the last set of the answers when someone bumps into her, but fortunately she is able to do so. Afterwards, the officer finally catches her, asking her to come with him for questioning. During the interrogation, Bank motions her to leave him by denying that he doesn't know her. Returning to Thailand, Lin is happily greeted by Pat and Grace and also finds out that their scheme was a great success, but she turns on them and rejects her share of the money due to her bad experience in Sydney. They still celebrate along with the other participants who had passed the STIC test. They also tell Lin that Bank already took his share beforehand, but then she leaves the group chat. Sometime later, she is invited by Bank to come to his place. It seems like he has invested his share in revamping his mother's laundry business. After that, Bank informs her to start another scheme. He also assures her that this time it will be much safer and a wider client base. When she turns him down, Bank threatens her to expose the whole affair, that she was another mastermind behind the last scheme. Lin then tells him again that she has made her choice, deciding to come clean. Later, she tearfully confesses to her father, who comforts her and helps her redeem herself by submitting a formal confession to the STIC organization. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, Sci-fi recapped here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today, I'm gonna explain a 2015 science fiction live-action movie called Assassination Classroom. This movie has a very unique concept about the relationship between students and teacher, and also has a very deep moral story behind it. Make sure to watch it till the end to find out. The movie begins with a giant explosion that destroys 70% of the moon, giving it its permanent crescent moon fixture. Back on Earth, the Japanese's military attempts to launch an attack on a mysterious creature. But unfortunately, all of the soldiers are wiped out by an octopus look-alike monster. The monster itself is suspected to be the culprit behind the destruction of the moon and plans to destroy Earth as well. At Kunigigioka Junior High, one of prestigious private schools in Tokyo, students, especially who are currently in their third years, are required to excel in all the fields of their education or they will get transferred to a remedial class called Class 3E. Students at Class 3E will study at a separate building, which is located about 1 kilometer away from the main school building. Surprisingly, the same monster with a yellow rounded face who is responsible for the moon destruction and plans to do the same to Earth by March next year is going to be the teacher for the Class 3E students. Tatomi Kurosama, representative from the Ministry of Defense, explains that the monster's speed is unmatched and urges the students from the class to kill the weird creature before next year. The creature also adds that he has made an agreement with the government to teach at Class 3E in order to delay his plan to destroy the Earth. In order to kill him, the students have to use specially made bullets and weapons from the Ministry of Defense which are harmless to humans, but deadly to the yellow creature. Before he leaves, Kurosama mentions that the reward for a successful assassination will be 10 billion yen, which made all students encouraged. In order to assist the students, Arina, a highly skilled assassin, is also hired to kill the creature, but she fails. Since then, Arina also does a part-time job to become their English teacher. After that, the class is officially named Assassination Classroom. Nagisa is the main protagonist of the movie. Despite his passive and shy personality, he is a very observant person. He tends to pay strict attention to his new teacher in order to understand his motives and compiles all the information in his notes for reference. The first attempt of killing happens when the yellow creature is teaching at the class. Equipped with knife and bombs installed on Nagisa, he approaches his teacher to submit his assignment and suddenly his friend detonates the bombs, almost killing Nagisa himself. But unfortunately, the plan fails as the teacher manages to dodge the explosion. Not only that, the failed attempt also makes the teacher angry as it almost kills one of his students. He threatens to kill all the students' relatives if they redo such silly things again. Since the creature seems to be unkillable and he is also a teacher, the class decides to name him Koro-sensei. Despite being full aware that he is the main target of the assassination, Koro-sensei is able to bond with Class 3, who in turn regard him as their indispensable teacher. Throughout the school term, Karma Akabane, who previously was a student from A class and has recently come out of his suspension due to protecting former Class 3E student from being bullied, joins the class. He is a very smart student as he manages to trick Koro-sensei when he meets him for the first time. Despite his academic excellence, Karma seems to be arrogant and overconfident. Koro-sensei then tries to fix his bad attitude in several ways. After school, Karma and Nagisa are approached by Koro-sensei. Karma asks whether the teacher would risk his life to protect one of his students and challenge him to do so, but it is actually his plan to put Koro-sensei at his weak spot and then try to kill him. Karma suddenly jumps off the hill while pointing his gun to the teacher. But somehow, Koro-sensei manages to rescue his student, thanks to his very elastic unlimited tentacles. Even though his plan fails, Karma doesn't give up and tells the creature that he will kill him someday. Because Kurosama's strategy shows no progress, his supervisor decides to deploy a transfer student to the Class 3E in order to kill the creature. It's an AI installed in a box, called Ritsu. Ritsu was programmed to only aim at Koro-sensei and is equipped with a lot of advanced military weapons, but the teacher manages to dodge all the bullets. The arrival of Ritsu makes students uncomfortable because it keeps firing while class is being conducted. The students even have to pick up the bullets later. Because of that, the students decide to lock her with duct tape and chain. One day, Koro-sensei approaches Ritsu and gives it some advice, which is to encourage it to collaborate with other students. Koro-sensei then gives Ritsu some data for the AI to learn. The next day, Ritsu can now express some expressions. She also creates a phone application in order to deepen her friendship with the students. When the class is about to start, out of nowhere a strange kid named Otona breaks into the classroom. He claims himself to be stronger than Koro-sensei and challenges him to duel after class. It turns out that Otona also has tentacles as his main weapon. Seeing the tentacles, Koro-sensei becomes very angry, as he asks Itona where did the tentacles come from. But Itona ignores Koro-sensei and continues to attack. He almost kills Koro-sensei and gets Koro-sensei cornered, but Koro-sensei manages to beat the kid with the same weapon the students use and throw him out of the class. Itona then is carried away from the school by his white-cloaked guardian after losing the match. After school, Koro-sensei is asked by his students about his real intention to teach the class. He replies that he does that to fulfill a promise he made to someone. To get closer to his students, Koro-sensei conducts assassination training camp where he uses his Mach speed to teach each student separately with targeted revisions for their worst subjects. One night, Koro-sensei sneaks into the girls' room and is forced by the female students to share his love life stories, but he then avoids the question and runs away. A few moments later, Kurasuma's role is replaced by Takaoka, an experienced drill inspector focused on PE, because he is not making progress at all in the assassination mission. At first, Takaoka seems to be very cheerful and put a lot of attention towards his students. But Arina manages to dig deeper into Takaoka's background and figures out that he is a very violent person. The real Takaoka is displayed when he does physical abuse to one of his students. Kurasuma manages to prevent him from doing something worse to the students. Instead, Takaoka challenges one of the students to duel. Kurasuma sees the assassination talent within Nagisa and asks him to battle with the rude instructor. With calmness and an unpredictable move, he manages to bring Takaoka down. Because Nagisa wins, the instructor has to leave the school with shame. The next day, one of the students, Okuda, gives Koro-sensei a poison, which turns out later to be sodium hydroxide, and asks him to drink it. Instead of killing him, the poison just boosts Koro-sensei's power because it stimulates his cells. Koro-sensei then continues his lesson, but suddenly the students ask him why they need to study if they can get 10 billion yen by killing him. After that, Koro-sensei gathers all his students, including Arina and Kurasuma, at the field to motivate them. He explains that a confident assassin will always have a backup plan they can rely on. This backup means the lesson that the students learn for the future they will have, if they're not the one that kills Koro-sensei. Koro-sensei also shows off his ability to steal military stuff, telling the students that they have to excel in everything in order to be magnificent assassins and kill him. Final exam is coming soon, and to motivate his students to gain excellent marks, Koro-sensei promises that the top students of 5 academic subjects will be awarded a chance to cut off his tentacles, which will greatly slow him down, meaning that the possibility of assassinating him increases. Since then, with his Mach speed ability, Koro-sensei gives his students a first-hand experience of learning by bringing them to places where they can learn certain subjects directly. The result of the final exam is announced. Nakamura, Okuda, and Karma managed to get the highest marks for English, science, and mathematics. Also, there are 3 more students who managed to excel in home economics. Thus, the 6 students will have the opportunity to destroy Koro-sensei's tentacles. One of the students suggests to plan the assassination during the summer holiday, and the class agrees. The students are doing some preparations to ensure that the assassination will be successful with the right strategy. The execution day has come. Eventually, they manage to bind Koro-sensei and begin the attack. Thanks to Nagisa's observation, the class manages to discover one of Koro-sensei's weaknesses, which is water, and transform the arena into a water park. For the final blow, 2 students launch their final shots, resulting in Koro-sensei suddenly exploding. However, Koro-sensei transforms into a ball, which is his absolute form, to avoid being killed. Suddenly, Takaoka and his fellows confront Class 3E, claiming to be the culprit who poisoned several students. Takaoka offers to trade the antidotes for Koro-sensei. Nagisa and Karma team up to protect Koro-sensei from Itona, who is now working for Takaoka, while the other students try to find the cure for the poisoned students. Nagisa and Karma are no match to Itona's power as they struggle to beat him. But suddenly, as planned, a heavy rain occurs which weakens Itona's tentacle power. In the end of the battle, Nagisa manages to cut off the tentacles from Itona. Unfortunately, they are informed by Ritsu that Takaoka has kidnapped one of the students and threatens to kill her. Thanks to Nagisa's intelligence, they manage to trick Takaoka with a fake ball, and the students manage to turn over the table, punishing Takaoka and his fellows with their own weapons. At the end of the film, Koro-sensei is brought to the military facility. Seeing that Koro-sensei is vulnerable, the government proceeds to do a public execution in front of his grieving students. Before execution, Koro-sensei says his final words, telling that his students have shown very good progress during the semester. However, it's not that easy to kill Koro-sensei. He manages to survive the execution and is allowed to continue teaching Class 3E for the second term, making Class 3E the assassination classroom again, with Atona now enrolling permanently. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.
In 2014, an attempt to stop global warming through climate engineering backfires catastrophically, unintentionally causing an ice age, which extinguishes all life on Earth except that inhabitants of the Snowpiercer, a massive self-sustaining circumnavigational train, which is owned and run by its inventor Wilford. The train is divided into two groups. The people at the front of the train, who are the elites, they get the luxury experience. And the people at the tail of the train, who are the poor, or as the elite call them, the scums. We are now at 2031, and we meet our protagonist Curtis. And through his eyes we see how the last 17 years has been for the poor. They live in protein bar diet, and are treated horribly by the elite. We see the guards of Wilford beat up the poor, even if they look at them the wrong way, and life has become unbearable for the poor. This is why the poor, led by Curtis, are planning a revolution. Curtis have been getting information from an inside man in the elite circle, and he plans to use the information to take over the train. By his side, Curtis has his best friend Edgar, a hothead with a heart of gold, and his mentor Gilliam, who was a friend of Wilford in the past. In the next scene, we see the guards taking away two children, Andy and Timmy, forcibly from their parents. Andy's dad tries to fight them off, but he couldn't stop them. He then throws his shoes at a high-ranking elite. Minister Mason arrives at the scene, and she punishes the dad by putting one of his arm outside the train for 7 minutes, which freezes his arm fully. They then take his frozen arm and break it with a sledgehammer. The poor are all made to see the punishment, as Mason gives a speech telling the poor to know their place. The next day, Curtis gathers all poor passengers to start the revolution, but some of them are scared of the guards since they all carry rifle, and they could kill all of them easily. But Curtis has figured out that the rifles has no bullets, as he believes bullets have run out when they were used to stop the last revolution few years ago. To prove his theory, Curtis jumps at one of the guards and makes him shoot his rifle, which was, as he believed, empty. When they see this, all the poor attack the guards, overpowering them and pummeling them with iron bars. The group then make it to the prison cells. Curtis releases security expert Nam and his daughter Yona from their cells. Nam is one of the people who worked on the security of the train and knows how to unlock all the doors. He has been sent to prison with his daughter for some reason we don't know about. Curtis asks Nam to help them open the doors and lead them to the engine room, and in exchange he offers him 2 chronoles, a very addictive drug that only exists on this movie, for every door he opens. Nam agrees to help, and they travel to the next section, which is where the protein bars are made for the poor. Everyone fights over the bars as they all very hungry. Curtis goes to the machine that makes the bars, and when he sees inside, he finds out their food are grounded up insects. This disgusts Curtis, but he doesn't tell anyone, so that he wouldn't more chaos. He then meets up with Gilliam, who suggests that if they take the water supply car, they will control any negotiation with Wilford. Curtis agrees, but as they open the next door, they are ambushed by masked men with axes, knives, and hatchets. Fight breaks out, and Curtis men overwhelm the guards at the front. Then they all stop, as the train has made another circle, and it is a new year. Fighting stops as the guards count down to celebrate the new year and to thank Wilford. Mason then comes behind the guards and informs the poor that for their attempted revolution, they have been sentenced to lose 74% of their population. Suddenly, all the lights are shut down, and the guards all put on night vision goggles. They then attack Curtis's men, who are now fighting blind. The guards start winning, killing the people in the front. Nam then takes out a match he was hiding and gives it to Curtis, which he uses to light up torches that he gives to his people, which now can see in the dark and fight back. A bloody battle ensues, but by sheer number alone, the poor start killing all the guards. Curtis sees his opportunity to capture Mason, who is now alone. But as he goes to grab her, Edgar is killed by one of the leaders of the guard. Curtis does manage to capture Mason and puts an axe on her throat, which stops the fighting and makes the remaining guards surrender. Curtis threatens to kill Mason to draw out Wilford, but she tells them Wilford will never leave the engine. She also tells them that water comes from the front to the back, so even controlling the water won't make a difference. She then offers to take them to him in exchange for her life. Curtis takes few people with him, as the rest, including Gilliam, wait at the water supply. The group pass through multiple luxurious sections uninterrupted. They stop at an aquarium and eat sushi. Cooties also makes Mason eat the protein bar, Then they reach the classroom where children are taught about Wilford. They are told on how great he is, and they sing a song about how he is their savior. It's almost as he is their god. A cart filled with fresh eggs comes for the kids, and one is also given to Curtis. He opens the egg and finds a note that says blood. At that second, the teacher takes out an SMG and shoots at them. She kills one of his men before she is taken out. They then watch on the TV, the people in the water supply, including Gilliam, ambushed and killed. Curtis turns to Mason and without hesitation shoots her in the head and kills her. The group then move forward, chased by the guards. The guards, led by Wilford's right-hand man Franco, catches up to them as they both enter the sauna room. A close quarter fight breaks out, and the guards kill 2 more people from Curtis's side. Nam does manage to take down Franco, and Curtis finishes him off by stabbing him on the gut. Now only 3 are left: Curtis, Nam, and Yona. But they are getting close to the engine room. They pass through few sections where the elite party and do drugs, and Yona breaks off from the group and does drug with the elite. Curtis and Nam reach the gate to the engine room. Curtis waits for Nam to open the door, but Nam refuses. Curtis gets frustrated and they almost fight, but he calms down. Nam then reveals that he plans to use the Chronol as an explosive to blow up the gate to the outside world. Nam explains that every year he watches a plane that has crashed, but years ago only its tail was visible. But for the last few years the snow have been fading away, and now the plane is fully visible. Nam believes that this is a proof of the ice age fading, and that he wants to leave the train and live on the outside. Curtis then tells the story of the first months. He reveals that once they got on the train, the poor weren't fed for a month, which led them to cannibalism for survival. The strong ate the weak, and Curtis was the leader. One day, he finds a mom with her baby son. He kills the mom and takes the baby to eat, but Gilliam cut off his hand and gave it up for him to eat, which leads to other people sacrificing their arms and legs for food. Curtis reveals the baby was Edgar, and what he did to his mother, and almost to him, haunts him every day. A teary-eyed Curtis explains that he needs to get face-to-face with Wilford so he can ask why he did that to them years ago. Nam listens to his story. He commends him on his strength, but he still wants to finish his plan. He takes out his Chronol bomb and sticks it to the gate. He then asks Curtis to light up the bomb, but just as he asks, the engine door opens and Wilford's assistant emerges. She shoots Nam on the stomach. She tells Curtis Wilford is waiting for him, and she invites him to get inside. Curtis follows her, and he finally meets Wilford face to face. Wilford reveals to him that this revolution was actually planned by himself, meaning Wilford, and Gilliam, so that they can reduce the population and maintain the balance of the sealed ecosystem. He explains that Gilliam was in on it from the start, and they plan to stop the revolution at the water supply once they have lost 74% of the population. Wilford reveals even the previous failed revolts were orchestrated by Gilliam. Wilford then calls his guards and orders them to kill every tail passenger, leaving only 18 to celebrate the 18 years in the train. Wilford then takes him to the engine and offers him his job. A shocked and saddened Curtis falls to his knees, as he appears to be ready to accept Wilford's offer. Meanwhile, Nam has woken up, and Yona has also reached the gate. Yona rushes to Curtis and asks him to give her the matches. Curtis doesn't respond. She then pulls up a floorboard, revealing the young children taken from the poor are being used as a replacement for extinct machinery part for the engine. This also reveals that the poor only serves to provide slave labor and resource that is used to run the engine. Curtis knocks out Wilford and sticks him arm in the engine to save Timmy, losing his arm in the process. Yona then takes the match and gives it to Nam. He lights up the bomb, and the explosion sound triggers an avalanche that derails and destroys most of the train. After everything clears, Yona runs to her father, but he isn't responsive. Curtis is also badly hurt, and he lies on the floor. In the last scene, we see Yona and Timmy, presumably the only survivors, walking out of the train. They see a polar bear in the distance, proving that life exists outside the train. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.